Hello, this brief video on diversity and inclusion in hiring and in the workplace is prompted today by something I read from Jennifer Doudna, who is a Nobel Prize chemistry laureate as is known, about diversity. I read it at the Nobel Prize post on X, and she says that diversity is really important in science. First of all, think that if you want to have the best scientific outcomes, you need a lot of different brains. This is an interview from February 2021. And I have been looking for a job for some time, and I have encountered some issues with diversity in the hiring and want to make a little statement so that perhaps this can be taken into consideration in hiring in a very positive note to make things better. We can always improve something. I looked what is diversity, the definition from several sources, and will say from Indeed, but also I want to say that when I was a fellow in psychiatry at Albert Einstein College of Medicine in Montefiore Medical Center, I was on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee of the Department of Psychiatry because I'm very interested in diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Being a woman and originally having graduated medicine in Eastern Europe and did my PhD there, subsequently I obtained my CFMG certification here in 2 fellowships, one in neuroscience and one in psychiatry at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. And according to Indeed, of course this is known by everyone, but just to say briefly, diversity in academic hiring includes workforce diversity with respect to gender, race, ethnicity, religion, age, sexual orientation, physical abilities, and ideologies, employees' life experiences, socioeconomic studies. And also, education is included in diversity. It is a dimension of diversity. And so, diversity and inclusion increase productivity in innovation and trust and ultimately workforce performance. And what I have encountered is that because I have more experience and I am MD and PhD, there are many jobs in academic science and also in pharma companies that I could do because I have the skills and I have the necessary education, but I'm not preferred, perhaps because they say I'm overqualified. To give some examples, some jobs, such as a clinical research coordinator or senior clinical research coordinator, usually hire very recent graduates, very young people who want to go into medicine or science, and I have done the duties and have been a clinical research coordinator when I was a fellow in psychiatry for 3 years. I'm very well qualified and perhaps my experience would be very suitable to make useful suggestions for the work. And sometimes, as I was attending a seminar from the New York State Department of Labor on using age to your advantage, sometimes more experience will be advantageous. But precisely because I'm MD and PhD, I'm considered overqualified. And why with PhD I don't have my own lab? Because when I was applying for assistant professor, there was a hiring freeze for several years, for 2 years. And then this break already is too late because I'm not preferred for grants due to many years after obtaining my PhD. And this is another issue that NIH grants have a requirement with respect to years after you have graduated. Some have requirements with respect to age. And so this limits the people that could make science very useful and can contribute a lot. And to give two specific examples, one from academia and one from pharma. Recently, last Friday, I was contacted out of the blue by a recruiter from a company, this happens often, who emailed me, indicated that my resume is in their database, and emailed me a job as a clinical scientist in Bristol Myers Squibb in New Jersey. And the job, all of the requirements correspond perfectly to my qualifications, with the difference that the education stated there is Bachelor of Science, but I have PhD and MD. And I was very enthusiastic, as the recruiter indicated, called him, and when we spoke, he said, well, you are overqualified because you have PhD and MD and they want Bachelor of Science. But I have all of the qualifications. And he said, I will talk to my manager, but I don't think that he will be very open to this recommendation. And what I mean that sometimes being a medical doctor in scientific research, in biomedical research, may be advantageous because you know the presentation of a disease, and although you are doing studies in the laboratory, that might become useful. I have encountered this many times. And in principle, sometimes such small things as when I was a fellow in neuroscience at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, the western blot of one of my colleagues, a graduate student, wasn't working. The lines were very blurry. And I told him the transfer pads are very old and destroyed, and they don't transfer well. No, this should not matter. I told him change them. It was a bit difficult to convince him, but when he changed the pads, the lines of the proteins were very sharp. This is because I have seen it from experience. Another example is at my most recent job at Columbia University, we were doing stereotaxic injections in mouse brain. And I have worked a lot with mice and stereotaxic injections in brain, and specifically in striatum, with the lesioning of the striatum. And if one striatum is lesioned, the mice rotate in a contralateral direction. And we were injecting for different purposes to test gene therapies for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, adeno-associated viral vectors in mouse brain in striatum. And our mice started dying, and my supervisor was a bit apprehensive, and my colleague with whom she worked with birds before, and I noticed when I take care of the mice, I heard some noises, and they rotate many times. I would say 10, 15 to 20 rotations per minute, some of the injected mice. And I noticed this, told to my colleague, and told to my supervisor, and indeed it turned out that the mice that we inject with the highest vector concentration that are dying, about 2 weeks after they are injected, they start rotating. These are the mice injected in the striatum. And if we either reduce the dose or if we try to revive them with hydration and more food and some carprofen to decrease pain, they usually don't rotate so much, and they overcome this 2-week period and they survive. And so from my experience, I saved so many mice because I had seen that they rotate and I was careful observing them. So I'm just giving these examples. There are many that if there is more diversity in hiring in academia, this might be ultimately beneficial for research. Your comments will be highly appreciated. Thank you very much for your attention.